Hello everyone, welcome back to the seventh lesson of a Homeschooling 3D modeling course. In this lesson, as promised previously, we are starting to jump into drawing, and that also takes us to the more advanced tools. For today, I will, for the most part, focus on freehand drawing. I will slightly touch on other drawing just to draw a contrast between how one particular feature is working. And I will also show a new idea how you can import images. On my previous lesson, I actually showed how I've import a reference image to keep as a reference to model the pawn. And now I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's get started. In the view menu, over here, you have something that's called reference image, which the name explains it for itself. And I have prepared here an image that I'm going to use today for the drawings. And that's an image just Googled that I found. And this is a good example how freehand drawing should be working. But I want first to get you familiar with a few things over here. The first thing is once you import that, by default, almost everything you import in SelfKit gets put into the center, which is quite good. In this particular case, I will need this object to be centered because I'm going to need symmetry. We'll learn later about symmetry, where it can draw in one side and will automatically copy onto the other side. Unfortunately, this image is not symmetrical. As you can see, this image is not aligned with this dark grid. So let me show you about this dark one. You see you have the dark one in this direction, this direction. This gives you a hint where the center is to align them. And this is not aligned. So I will use actually this dark line to help me align it. But before I'm aligning it, I want to show you the basic features. You can obviously scale it. It looks like it's asymmetric, the scaling, and then you can grab the center point and move it around. So you can move it on different planes. To get familiar with the term planes, that's the same thing as we call the grid. The grid is kind of like a style. It's a grid style, but it's put onto this thing that you see, which is called plane. In the workspace settings, I'm not sure if you've shown that before, you have an option to turn off the grid. You have an option to turn off remove planes or put additional planes in the side. So this is called planes. Once we go into drawing, you will see, learn the concept of planes. And when it comes to drawing, especially the more advanced drawing, we're probably not going to touch on that part today. You're going to learn that you can draw on multiple different planes. So just to get familiar with that term. So in any case, you can drag it around on this particular plane, but you can also move it on a separate plane, regardless if you have that visible. In the workspace settings, we said you can put on different planes, color them, different grid style, like all type of settings. But regardless if it's visible or not, it's virtually still available in the application, and especially for this use case for putting reference images. You can put it on a different plane over here and so on. So depending what you model, in many cases you import an image just as a reference to kind of give you a hint how to do it. With the example, how I uploaded that chess piece to model that with the freehand, with the shape generated in the previous video, I did not trace that completely, just as a hint. In that case, you kind of will put it in a corner, wherever works for you. In this particular case, I am going to trace that. And before I'm going to center, I want to show you another trick, because when you're going to trace something, you want to have real measurements. So in that case, it's a general practice in most 3D applications. Also, I just want to notify that this idea about reference images, and maybe call different names, but it's a standard practice in any standard CAD package. So before we going to make this perfect, if you want to measure something in sizes, let's say I want to know how much this size is everything, I need to put it in portion. So I'm going actually to put this first to make it a little bit opaque. I'm going to put a 25. That's just when I'm going to trace. I can still see my grid, still see what's happening. But before I'm aligning it, I'm going to exit out, and I'm going to put a different cube onto the scene. And I'm going to make that a width of, let's say, that I want this size to be. So I'm going to make it a width of, let's say, 400. Okay. And I'm going to make a height of, let's say, 300. Okay. Not a height, I'm sorry. Height should be like, let's say, just 5. And I make then a depth of 300. Okay, so this gives me like an idea approximately how I want to size that image. So I want this to be the size, and based on that, things will be, obviously you can scale later, and this particular example may not be that, important, but just as a general practice, teaching that how this should be done. I'm going to do now the same thing and make this a little bit opaque. So I'm going to make this also to 25 so I can see through. And now if I go back to my view, to the reference image, I can take this image and I can align it, scale it to fit this box. So now when I'm going to start drawing on it, it will be proportionate to this box. And I know this would be the size of the frame it would be a 400 by 300, and the depth obviously in this case doesn't make sense. It's not important. So now I can actually get rid of the image, but I need to align this. So I'm going to misalign it from this cube, no longer need that reference obviously. But as you can see, I need to align this so I'm going to have symmetrical, and I'm aligning it this way. I only care about aligning it on this direction, the X direction. I can actually move it down a little bit, and that wouldn't make a difference because I'm going to be drawing symmetrically just on this direction. And in general, I don't like things to be close to this, because if you draw and it's close to this, your mouse will stop working because it will intersect these tools, and this kind of blocks the 3D movement. So I don't like to have things very close to that. In any case, I can close now my reference image. I can get rid of this cube. I may actually use it later, but SelfKit remembers the setting anyway, so I can add it anytime as I need them. So let's jump in. I'll give you first a general overview of the drawing, what the drawing is doing, and then we'll start with the real action. So we have this freehand drawing. You know the concept in SelfKit by now from previous videos. It has a nice flow. So if you see two options, you expect the first one is more simpler, and then the next one is more advanced, and so that's basically the case over here. There is a concept which is called Boolean operations, which is the same name stitch and scoop is doing. It stitches and it scoops. That's basically what Boolean is doing. And in stitch and scoop, you have 4 options. When it comes to a concept called profiles, which is not more than using a technical terms, maybe a derivative, or it's basically something that it's not used by itself. It's kind of like a mold, something that you use from that to build other things. It's not an object by itself. It's just a profile of an object. So when you're dealing with profiles, there is no tool like stitch and scoop. So you normally do them manually. So how about this? I will first going to show you how it's done in regular drawing. That's how it works in general applications. So if I'm going to do something very basic, I'm going to draw a simple rectangle, and now I want to add to it, let's say, a circle over here in the top. I can add them in different ways. So first of all, I'm going to add a circle over here, and you can see I have a few possibilities now. I can say I want to have the circle to be outside and cut out this piece, or I want to engrave that, cut out this and this and so on. So there's no tool like Boolean. In most applications, there's a separate tool that is called trim. You click on a trim tool, and then you click on what you want to trim. It works very nice, but in SelfKit, actually, because they have reusable tools and needs to be very intuitive in that matter, you just click on this on the face mode, and you click on what you want to trim away. So I'm clicking on this, and then I click delete, and it is trimmed away. So in that case, so let's undo that and see how I can trim the other possibility. Let's deselect, and I'll trim basically this, and I click delete. So it's the same idea as trimming. It's just that you do that automatically, manually over here. So actually, I find it much easier. There's even an added benefit over here, because you can go to edge mode, and in that case, it will select edges. So if I want to trim away, let's say, just small pieces of this, this will kind of, let's say I'm going to delete now. I'm deleting just small pieces, and you can start building different type of stuff and whatever. So this is how it's generally done. Yes, in SelfKit it's easier, but still, that's basically how it's done. Now, the second thing is, once you want to add something to this, as I said, this is just a profile. If you want to make this into a real object, you would need to add something. First, a 2D plane, which is called a surface. The difference between a plane and a surface: a plane implies it's only flat. So this particular is only flat, but I can actually move that. I can go to vertex mode and select some vertices, let's say this vertex, and I want to move this up. So I click M to activate my move tool, and I can move this up. So now if this is no longer a plane, this is no longer straight, but this is called a surface, because now it's a profile. Once I fill that, that's a surface because it's a 2D. So let's see what I can do with it. I'll go to fill polygon, and this fills it nicely. So this filled this surface. Now you have a surface. The surface is not yet a 3D object. So you have basically stages. You have a profile stage, then you have a surface stage. Now you need to convert that into a 3D object, which we can use the tools we have already got familiar a little bit before. It's extrusion, and I can extrude that and add height to it. And it's one way of adding. This other way of adding is add thickness to it. Not to go into that part for now. But that's the general flow, how it will work in other applications, although in SelfKit it's a little bit easier because you have the intuitive way instead of trimming. And more flexibility with edges and faces. But now we can move on to the freehand drawing and show in contrast why I really love this tool It's not going to solve everything. It's not designed to draw surfaces. It's not designed to draw complex shapes that you need three-dimensional drawings. But when it comes to 2D drawing like this, this is where this is amazing. So I'll start with a rectangle. Actually, let's start with this brush first. The brush is, so you have the basic primitives, like the same way we have in shapes, different, it's called primitives, different type of standard shapes. You have over here different primitives. You have a spline, which is basically aligns themselves, so you can just trace something with the spline. But what I like the most, and you have actually text as well, but you have the brush drawing. The brush drawing automatically already draws a thickness. And the event system, let me show you the event system, how this is working. Let me undo this. You can, in all of these brushes, you can scribble, like hold down the mouse and continuously draw. And as you can see, this already creates a red. That means it's going to be a hole. We'll cut out. We'll come back to that for a minute. Or you can click one place and then click again. It traces, you see this thin line, it will show you like where you expect it, and then you can click on the next line, and then you can continue clicking, and if you want to stop it, you just click escape, and it stops it. It's still, you see still this brush because it's still active. If you want to deactivate, you basically click over here to deactivate. In this case, it asks me like if you want to deactivate anything, just exit. But going back to this, I'm going to draw that, and it's time to start action. So I'm going to trace this with, I love this brush because it gives me the thickness already. So I'm going to make it 5. In this case, I want to draw from here to here, but my problem is my hand is not always straight. My hand may be shaking a little bit and it's difficult to draw straight. So there is something, a setting over here. If you go down setting, you have plane settings, and I'll go into this in future videos when we're going to do more advanced drawing where this is much more relevant and all these settings. I'll quickly going to show in fill settings. You can choose what you want to fill. Once you finalize it, you can fill top, bottom, or holes. Again, I'm not going to touch on it now for much. You have a height settings. The default will create a mesh out of this. A mesh means like this 3D object. If I 20, you can change it higher, and if you make it 0, the output will be a profile. And I think in future videos we'll have a chance to see why this is so important. And for now, what I'm looking at is the precision settings. So in order for me to draw precisely, I need to set my precision. There's a few ways to do that. One way is I can snap to something. I can turn on to snap to my grid. So for example, you can see it snaps to, it's called grid, but it's actually not the grid, it's the vertices in the between the boxes in the grid. And I said, I think in the first video, that you'll see later when it comes to drawing why sizing the grid is important. And this is one of the most use cases where you need them, is if you want to model something, not really tracing something, or just in general, and you want to have measurements based on different things, and you can create your grid based on the sizes that you're going to use, and then keep on snapping from point to point, which makes it very, very helpful in different type of drawings. For now, I don't need that because you can see my image is not aligned based on grid points, so it wouldn't help me. And if it doesn't help, it annoys you because whenever you try drawing, it will kind of try to snap to it. So this is something that I've never seen someone continue using that always. You turn it on when you need it, and when you don't need it, you want to turn it off. It's going to block you. Similar thing is the idea about angle steps and step size. Step size will mean you can make it only, if I make it 10, you cannot draw something smaller than 10. If you make it 100, it will kind of just allow you to draw only things that's 100. And angle is the same idea. You can make, you want to draw only, let's say, a 90-degree angle that will allow you only 90-degree turns. But if you want to keep it something straight, 15 is a good number. That will mean just you cannot go, you can draw, for example, you can see I can draw, you see my movements will only be sharp movements by 15 degree. And in that case, that's basically, let me undo this point. And in that case, that's not what we're going to do. What's, yeah, that will help me for this case. I want to show you if you see what happened. I can give a click and position something, I press escape, and it leaves me this point. So it's actually another idea. That's only by brush, because brush already has by itself a complete thing. If you can do the same idea with another drawing, let's say if you press over here a point and then I press escape, the entire line disappears. But the brush, because a point and a line is nothing, just a point, the brush by itself has a thickness. So in that case, you can kind of use it to do things like that when it goes to the brush. And obviously you have different styling over here, so you can make, let's say, a square thickness and kind of make a box and escape it. And if you finalize it, you'll have a circle and you have a box, and you know, based on the thickness that you do. But for now, I don't need a square and boxes, so let me just undo that. And we'll start with the action. I have my precision on to angle 15, so we can start drawing. So I'll start tracing that, and I'm drawing like this. You see how straight lines are going. and I'm drawing like here and here. I could have actually used a little bit more precision something, because I got now, oops, what did I do? Okay, so you see it's not 100% straight. This is where if I use a grid snapping point, I could have made it more, or a minimum step size angle, I could have measured 400. And so, or the other option is I can type in. As you see, I start moving. This gives me, actually it's not in this drawing, I'm sorry, it's in the other drawings. Interestingly, they don't have it on this one. If you start using a line drawing, you see you have the measurements in the bottom. So I'm actually wondering why they don't have it over here. But you have measurement bottom, you just type in the measurements. That's interesting. I hope they add that in the future, because I see them helpful. But nevertheless, once I have this, you see I have the box, which is the outside, and then you have the inside, which is it's going to be the hole. If I have the fill settings to fill the holes, this will be one solid. Will create like a cube. But if I have this, we'll create just the frame. So I'm going to finalize this, and I'll come back to show you how we can use it later, but just to get familiar how this will look like. So if you finalize this, you see we didn't create a hole, we created only this box. So now we're going to go back to my freehand drawing. I need to continue drawing, but obviously I need to redraw this, but actually I don't need. I can go to hide all objects. I'm going to hide this away, but I'm actually going to drag and drop. I want to show you just another trick. You can drag and drop something, anything, and it will actually also create a profile. So you can take any object, drag and drop them, and it will create a profile. Over here I'm having a problem to position them precisely, so I'm just going to redraw it quickly. And go back to my drawing, just do it quickly, redraw that, and okay, and I draw it over here. Okay, so now we got, again, the same thing. I have problem here with this. I have to be more measurements, or I hope they will add over here the same they have in all other tools, all other drawings except this, because this is mostly kind of designed for scribbling a brush, but I use it for this because I like the thickness. I could have drawn a rectangle, which is the easiest way to draw this, but if I draw a rectangle, I need to draw the outside box, and then I need to draw the inside box, and then I need to measure the thickness. So the only way for me to do that would be to use actually typing in the measurements, and it just takes more time. I just love the brush. Okay, so now we're gonna start thinking what we need to do. So I'm gonna start drawing. I have a hole over here, so if I start drawing here to here, it will automatically create this as a hole. But that's not what I need. I don't need a hole over here. I need actually a solid over here. So there is an idea over here where you can start erasing, and I'm going to erase. If I'm erasing, and this actually is an eraser. So let's get an idea what's happening over here. I think we actually need to draw, not as a whole. So let's see if this is gonna. I want to just verify what this is gonna finalize, because I actually don't know. This is gonna finalize a solid. Okay, it is in a hole, so that's fine. So let's go back to my drawing, and let's see now if I can drag and drop it. Otherwise, I have to redraw it. So okay, I think I got it right, almost. So now let's redraw it. Okay, so let's get started. I have my drawing, and okay, so now we're gonna start drawing from here, and we start tracing this quickly. And you can see I can start continuously going, even go over one on top of the other. I don't have to like stop my mouse and continue drawing, because this just connects everything. You see I can continue going from here to here. I don't even exit my mouse, because it just traces, keep on clicking, and it just traces everything. So I click exit now, because now I have a total different thing. And I go over here, and now I'm going to go over here, and okay, as you can see, this opens up automatically everything. It makes you all of these connections waves, which is really easy. Imagine if I need to do this manually trimming. This would be a big hassle to do this, and in this case this is like really saving me a lot of time. Okay, so let's take over here, and I'm almost done. In some cases, if I go over the other, it kind of cancels my drawing. Looks like it understands that I'm going over, so it ignores it. So then I have to click again. So it's not always helping the idea of clicking and going over a previous drawing. So you can see over here, it detects already this is a drawing because I'm drawing with outside the hole. So I think it's time for me to make, just to make sure I'm not messing it up, it's time for me to make the interesting part, which is this symmetrical. So now I'm going to turn on symmetry, and I'm simply going to start snapping from this point over here, and I'm going to start drawing on, focusing on one side. Okay, and I hope I can draw a little bit more precise. In normal case, if you want something to be nice, you wouldn't use a drawing like this. You would use a spline or arcs, which is available in the next drawing. So this is not very precise, but you can probably have less shaky hand than mine, so you can do it. But in normal case, actually, you want to use splines because I wanted to get the exact thickness. That's how I did it. But yeah, for manufacturing purpose, you would want to use more precision. But in any case, this is how we get this done, this correctly done, although this is not nice. I will need to show you how this is done nicely. So let me hide this away for a second. And this I can delete this part. This part I can delete, this part I can delete. And I can also draw it a little bit more focused or zoom it out, not so shaky, but yeah. So let me go to 3D Sketch actually and show you this option. You can draw actually using a spline where I can use symmetry, the same idea. And this is good to show the difference between a spline and an arc. A spline, you click on a location and then you click on every kind of detail where you see. So I click here, for example, and then if I'm going to click, let's say here, this will automatically smooth out. So this is something where I'm clicking on certain key points and it smooths out. It doesn't smooth out perfectly, but depending on the smoothness, actually you have a smoothness only 5 set. You can make a more smoothness. So if you make a smoothness over here higher, this will get, you know, a better smoothness. But nevertheless, this created something that is at least smooth out. It smooths automatically out, but it's approximation. It's something that's, it uses an algorithm to smooth out between points, and depending how your smoothness is set and depending of how many points you click on, this will kind of smooth it out. And in that case, we need to add thickness. We'll show in future lessons how you can actually have a few ways of adding thickness to this. The other way is drawing, which is in engineering. If you want to do something precisely, okay, my undo was undoing just one last step, so I have to undo the entire thing. So okay, if you want to design something precisely, you go using an arc, a 2-step arc. For this example, it's very good. So if I draw, let's say for example from here to here, then I can go and I position it myself. So I can kind of go from here to here, and then I go, let's say from here to here, and then I position myself. So it's not smoothing, it's just me positioning it. The same idea, I draw from key points to key points, but then need to smooth it out myself to move it. And that's a different way. If you know how to draw the key points, this can make you something very precise. But yeah, it's a different type of approach. But nevertheless, for now, I'll finish this, and I'm gonna add something to this part over here. I'm going to add a back wall. I need to have a back wall. So first of all, the default is 20, so I need to scale it up. I need this to be a little bit higher. So I'm gonna scale this up to, let's say, make the height of 200. Let's have it something nice high. And now I'm going to add the cube again. I'm going to add the cube, the same cube we had before, but before I can add that, actually I can add it now. I'll make a height of, let's say, 5 should be fine. I'll make a height of 5. This is positioned in the center, but my drawing was not in the center because I had to offset that to get my symmetry working, because symmetry needs to be from the center of the scene, from that line. And I showed you the image wasn't symmetrical. So I'm going to double click my, you can double click on move, or you can just open it and move, click on center. It doesn't matter, the same thing. So both of them are centered, but I need to take actually, let me select the other part, inverse select, selecting the cube, deselecting this. I need to move up my cube by, to be in the center of this. So if the height is, I'll make it 100. So the height of this, okay, so you see now it's actually sticking out. It's sticking out a bit too much. I don't want that to be sticking out. I know the thickness of my wall is 5. That was the thickness of my brush. So somehow I didn't draw the outside perimeter of this, I drew the inside. So there's two ways I can fix that. I mean, I can go and scale this or scale this, but I think it's a better idea to scale the object because we have a precise measurement. So if I go to the object setting, you see it's less than 400 over here. I need this to be 400 and I need this to be 300. Okay, but now I still need this to be not to be flush, to be a little bit inside. So I'm still gonna reshape my cube a little smaller. So I'm gonna make the cube by, instead of 300, I'm gonna make it, let's say 399, and over here 299, maybe even 298, 398. Okay, now we're gonna select both of them and I'm gonna go to our friendly Boolean union tool, stitch and scoop, and here you go. So now you have an object, something like this, designed and literally just one tool, and this is both sides now. So you have a tool. Let me rotate this 90 degree around the X. So actually I had to do it -90, otherwise it's upside down. So -90. Okay, so I have this piece of furniture which has a two-sided piece of furniture with this nice, you know, hard style shelves designed, literally designed in, you know, in no time. So I think one last thing I want to show is that I didn't mention on the drawing that is important is, go back, just a theoretical example. When I showed before the idea about, let's see, you could take over here even rectangles, you can take something that you have patterns. So first of all, you can draw something precisely, that's something like this. And I want to show the same example I used before in the basic drawing, how you can make Boolean operations. You've seen it in the drawing, but just to contrast, same idea. So if I'm going to draw a circle over here, this will by default cut in over here. You see, it kind of creates that, it saves all of this time from trimming. But if I want this to be a hole in, like the other type, I can simply click on eraser and you start erasing. So in most cases, you control that yourself. You click erase and you start drawing things like this. And same thing, I can draw an eraser over here and it creates a hole over here. So the red is always where it creates a hole. This is not a hole because it's open. You see, the red is where it creates a hole. If I finalize this, it will create a hole. In my previous drawing, you've seen how I've drawn this piece of furniture. It automatically detects when you draw, when it creates holes. And in that case, I was only drawing because I didn't draw holes. If I would have filled first the entire thing or create a rectangle without a thickness, without a hole, then I would need to kind of draw my holes. But that's kind of, it takes time to get used to understanding when you draw a hole, when you need to draw a hole, when you need to erase, use eraser, when you draw a solid. The other thing is you can move points. So if I go move points, it actually shows me over here these points, and I can just drag one. So let's say I don't want this to be perfectly, I want to make some pattern over here, I just go. But by default, if I draw now, it will draw both again. So I have to deselect this and select this part. Because otherwise, if I continue selecting, it will select all of them because it works continuously selection. So let's say if I select all these three, and now I go and drag, it will drag all three together. So you can see this how we move points. So why is this important? Because this drawing is really, really creative, the way it does automatically all of this Boolean operations. And that's a very expensive operation, meaning expensive not as far as money, but expensive as far as computing power. And you cannot, it kind of like lives in a tool. Think about while you are in a stitch and scoop, you can do different type of stuff. And because of that, SLK disables all other tools. You see over here, nothing is available. Most tools, if you do this, probably will tell you you need to cancel this. So everything is not available. So the essential things you need is available from here. Basically, just moving points and these things, but actually do not have that much more flexibility. When it comes to the other drawing, it's an integrated part of the application that you can, while you are in drawing, you've seen before, I can select faces, actually, which is not faces. It's called the minimum polygon cycle. It selects polygons or edges and select some edges, and you can start working in it. So that's another big differentiator between them. For now, I'm going to show you how I finalized this. This basically created what I did over here. So this is really, really unique in its easy way of drawing things. I've seen a lot of engineers use this tool to draw architectural designs, that if you have an architectural design, a blueprint to follow, this is a breeze, and doing them with trimming takes a lot more time. But in some cases, I'll show you one example when this is not good, is let's say if you want to draw a house and you're going to go to the 3D sketch, and let's say if we're going to draw a simple thing, let's say, I can even add, let me go the number of edges. See, you have more settings here actually. You can have the number of edges. So I'm going to draw, let's say, 2 edges on my rectangle. I'll turn off my symmetry, and I'm going to draw a simple rectangle from here to here, and I'm actually going to type in the length. You see in the bottom, it says the length. I'm going to type in 400. So this kind of helps me to make 400, and then I do it over here, and I'm going to type in 300. So you can see, first of all, this gives you much more precision. Then I'm going to go to a line drawing, and I'm going to draw from snapping from this point. See the green dot? And the snapping, I think, is available in both drawings. The snap from here to here, okay? And that's it. And I'm going to finalize it. Now, if I'm going to fill this, regardless if I fill it first or I move it up first, doesn't really matter. But if I'm going to fill this, let's say go or let's say even before filling, if I take this now, I can select this edge, and I'll go to my move tool, and I can move this up, let's say, to 100. Okay, so now you created something like this, and now I can actually draw my bottom planes as well. I can continue drawing on it. I go to my drawing, and I can draw. Yes, ask me if I want to deselect the lines. Yes, I'm fine with that. And now I'm going to draw from here to here, and something like this, and it snaps automatically. It stops the line, it detects it's a line, and I'm drawing from here to here. Okay, something like this. Okay, and now I'm going to fill this. Now if you go fill polygons, and we filled a nice rooftop, okay? And this is actually now manifold, it's a complete mesh, it filled it everywhere, detected it. If you're going to draw in contrast the same idea with and freehand drawing, it will automatically fill in because it doesn't have the concept of having like edges in the middle. So if I draw the same idea, a line from here to here, something like this, and if I'm going to draw now, let's say something in the center, without making a hole. I can make a hole. If I'm going to draw like a line now, let's say even if I have my snapping point, I'm not even sure if I have it. Looks like I don't have it because it doesn't make sense. If I'm going to snap something like this, and now we're going to finalize this, okay, this basically finalizes the complete mesh, the entire thing, and it ignores that line. If you look at wireframe, you see this line is removed. It just gives me this line, the triangulation, which I think I can remove it even from resolution. But it didn't give me my expected results. Yes, I can remove that, but it didn't give me my expected results over here, so I cannot move that up to create my rooftop. I can, however, create profiles in freehand drawing. So if you want to have the flexibility of having the self-contained, like automatically Boolean operation, save so much time, but you want to use it in architectural design and something, you can make the height of 0. So let's actually see if it's going to work in a case like this. I think it should. So if I'm making the height of 0, so let's see, if I draw now a line from here to here, and I go to my height settings, and I make the height to 0, let's see, I actually got my profile. Let's see what I got over here. It blocks me my thing. I think actually it did remove the line. Yeah, it still removed the line. I get only this. You see, let me go to view, reference image. I'm going to hide this. I can just delete them, but sure, you can actually hide them. You see, you don't have the center line. So this is always making the Boolean. And in a Boolean tool, if you have a line without anything, it's not a hole, it's just a line that needs to be removed. So this is where the difference between freehand drawing and there's a lot more differences because you've seen just a hint of it, how to draw the rooftop, where you can draw in 3 dimensions, but once you start adding multiple planes and drawing in multiple planes simultaneously, many other things, this gives you a hell of a lot more flexibilities, but still your freehand drawing is your friend for whenever you want to have something real life, easy, automatically extrude. The next thing I want to show you is just one more thing, so I know I covered the drawing, the basics, is the idea that you can actually drag and drop other shapes to make them. I showed before a little bit drag and drop, but I want to show you an interesting example. So let's say I have this sphere. I'm going to finalize this with the basic settings. I'm going to go to my flatten tool, and I'm going to flatten this down. Actually, let's do it before flatten first. So I'm going to have something like this, and now we're going to go to the freehand drawing, and I had checked my hide all objects, that's what I want, and I'm going to draw this sphere. Look what's happening. It creates a circle. Why is it creating a circle? Because it projects that on a 2-dimension, and if you squash that, kind of like think about you squash that down, you get just the outside circle, which is the biggest part in the center around, and that gives you a circle. But now I want to show you another thing. What if I flatten this first? So I don't allow them to flatten it for me. I flatten it myself. So I flatten that, something like this. In this case, you have some interesting geometry here actually. I'm going to actually remove duplicates because now I got a lot of duplicates. So look how much I removed. So this is basically what you expect to get in a shape like this. But now I'm going to go to the freehand drawing again, and let's drag this. And actually, this is still flattening things over here inside. So unless I think I can do that if I first have a hole. Let's see if I remove this. Let's see if I can make it work. I don't think I can. Maybe if I can select the polygons. I'm actually not sure. I'm testing it now. I'm gonna delete the polygon. I'll get it out. I can select all edges probably. I go to edges and I select all, and I copy this. Okay, I can just Command C in this case, make a copy, and I'm going to inverse select, delete my mesh, and I have only this now. So now I'm going to go to freehand drawing, and I'll get it like this. Okay, here you go. So I got it done. So now if you want to create a profile like this is the way of doing that. This is now completely finalized. You can use that as a profile. You continue drawing from this. So you have a lot of interesting ways of dragging objects sometimes. You have to get creative because you have to understand the way this thinks. It projects everything. If you have it filled, it projects it as a circle. In this case, because it's not filled, I had only the edges, it projects it on something like this, and you can use it for this. And in many cases, I've tried it before when I've imported objects, for example, from Image 3D, and then I wanted to convert them into a real sketch. Sketch and profile are interchangeable, use the same idea in some software. It's called Sketch. That's basically another tool you can use in the freehand drawing to know that they project everything into 2D. I think that's it basically. I did not cover intensively patterns. Oh, patterns I need to cover. So patterns is something where I can choose a pattern that they have, not that many, just a few options, or you can upload your own SVG. So let's say I choose what they already have. They have something they call pattern or star. Let's see. So if we're going to draw, let's say, a rectangle over here, and now it starts filling in with that pattern that I chose. So look at this. This starts filling in with this, and this is really amazing, and this interacts actually with this object as well, interacts with everything. If you're going to finalize this, you're going to get something. If my height settings is still set to 20, reset, you're going to get now, look at this, it interjected both of them. It completed that as a whole. It wasn't a whole. If this would have been dragged in as a whole, this would have been as a whole in it, and otherwise this is like this. It completed the entire thing. So this is amazing how you can combine things. So let me show you about dragging as a whole. So if I go to freehand drawing, I do the same idea. I create a pattern. It remembered that I had a pattern. I create something like this, and now before I drag and drop, I turn on my eraser. So now if you're going to drag and drop, this will be dragging as a whole. So now let's finalize it. Let's see what's happening. Look at this, it cut this out as a whole, but still it ignored the inside faces because this is it makes a union out of it. It's a real union. There are more advanced tricks I can show you how you can actually make that into, but just the mindset, if you want this to be considered as something, you need to add thickness to these edges. So if I make these edges into the minimum thickness, it will consider that as an object, not projecting the entire thing at once. And there is ways of doing that, but that's way too advanced, and we'll move on. The options will be available from the tools that we'll see later on. I think that's it. Covers now the basic drawings, and I hope in the next lesson we'll start going more advanced drawings in 3D Sketch and how that's used together, but actually not just the drawing themselves, but actually how you use that drawings, that profiles, to create objects using the tools. That's basically what most tools are about. Although everything's reusable, all of the tools could be used for objects as well, but the best use cases are when dealing with profiles, and that's where you create magic stuff. Okay, thanks for watching, and I see you in the next video. Bye.